and we didn't get to hear from some members. So I would like to have everyone reintroduce themselves and have a few comments if they would like at the beginning. Our new members, I'll start with them. Matt Beeman. Mr. Beeman, are you?
Hello.
Hi. Could you just give a little introduction, please?
Sure. I'm a CPA here in Winter Haven.
Hey guys, can we pause for a second?
Sure.
Before we get started now, let's go ahead and call the meeting to order.
Oh, thank you, Travis. I'm so sorry.
At 9 a.m. here, we'll get going, and then
Yes.
go ahead if you would, Matt, continue on. If we'll kind of go around as you see yourself on the screen, that would be awesome.
Okay. My name is Matt Beeman, and I'm a CPA here in Winter Haven with Adamson and Company. First year on the board, and happy to help, and happy meeting for a change.
Thank you. Miss
I'll
Loretta.
go next. Travis Keys.
Okay.
I am a commercial lender at Center State Bank, nominated to the committee by Lori Cunningham. I don't know how long ago now. It seems like a long time ago.
That's right. It's been a little while. Okay, Miss Loretta.
I'm Terry Loretta. I'm an accountant with CPS Group CPAs, formerly Bayless and Company CPAs, and this is my first year.
Thank you. Mr. Foltz.
Hello, good morning. My name is Bernard Foltz. I'm a retired CPA living in Bartow. Previous experiences, not-for-profit and community health care. And glad to serve.
Thank you. And Ms. Brooks.
Good morning, everyone. Doretha Brooks. I am a retired Board of County Commissioner employee, and I've had accounting, solid waste, and a few other careers with the county in economic development. Glad to be here this morning. I am returning.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Dr. Hahn.
Hi, my name is Bill Hahn. I'm a professor of accounting at Southeastern University. I'm a CPA licensed in Ohio, go Buckeyes. And I think this is my 5th year now on the committee.
Great, glad to have you. And Mr. Tom Jennings. I saw Tom earlier. And we'll come back to Mr. Jennings.
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm here now. Thank you. Tom Jennings. I'm also a CPA in Winter Haven. I think this is my 2nd term go around, so glad to be here.
Great, we're glad to have you. And Mrs. Kay Fields is our school board liaison. Mrs. Fields.
Good morning, everyone. Very happy to be here this morning. I want to thank each of you for serving on the committee. We know there's this is a big commitment, and we appreciate you giving your time and your expertise and your knowledge. And I want to personally say good morning to Bernard Fuss. Bernard and I worked together at ALPI many years ago. And also I want to thank Mr. Doretha Brooks for serving on the committee again. This is her 2nd go around. So again, very happy to have everybody this morning. Look forward to working with each of you. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Of course, I'm Carol Matthews. I'm the Director of Internal Audit, and my staff is Cece Gill. Cece, would you like to say anything? Is your audio working?
Yep. Cece Gill. I am the Senior Internal Auditor. I've been here for about 2.5 years now. Prior to that, I worked at a CPA firm in Lake Wales. And it's great to be here.
Thank you. And Sean Finney.
Hi, I'm Sean Finney. I'm an internal auditor here. I just started with Polk County back at the end of November. Previous experience, I was an accountant for a financial firm named Stevens back in Arkansas, where I came from.
Thank you, Sean. And then I see Heather Jenkins has joined us from Finance.
Good morning. I'm Heather Jenkins. I'm the Acting Associate Superintendent, or CFO. It's nice to be here with you guys today. I'm joining by phone for a minute. I apologize. I had some car issues this morning, so I'll see you on the computer shortly.
Okay, thank you, Heather. Did I miss anyone? Okay. If not, I'm going to turn it over to our chair, Mr. Travis Keys.
Thank you, Carol. Good morning, everyone. The first item on the agenda here is the acceptance of the minutes from our February 16th meeting. Everyone should have received those minutes. So we'll go ahead and open that up for discussion. Are there any changes that anybody has seen that needs to be noted? Having heard none, I will entertain a motion to accept the minutes.
So moved.
Need a second?
I'll second.
Having a first and a second. Are we ready for the question? We'll take the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, like sign.
Aye.
The ayes have it unanimous. We have accepted the minutes for the February 16th meeting. We're going to change it up a little bit as Heather comes in. And we'll now pass it over to Carol and her team for the internal audit update, if that's okay with you, Carol.
Absolutely. Thank you. Did you want to first talk, Travis, about our new superintendent and how you served on that search committee?
Absolutely. So as many of you know, we have gone through an amazing process here recently in choosing the Polk County Schools next superintendent. I was privileged to be on that citizen search committee. I will tell you that it was quite the task going through a list of 52 applicants and vetting each of those. We had 7 finalists, 2 of which dropped out, leaving us 5. And I will tell you that the meet and greet for me was probably one of the most important steps that we went through, being able to see those candidates face to face, ask them the questions that we as the community felt were important to us. And I will tell you, walking into that meet and greet session, I attended the one in Haines City. My opinions changed of who I would recommend going in and then coming out. My opinion changed. So Mr. Hyde was selected as that has experience in Florida, in Duval County, as well as with the Florida Department of Education. I think he will be a great asset. And I would encourage those of you obviously are passionate about education and serving on this committee. I would encourage you to stay plugged in, stay involved, and take the opportunity, if you get it, to talk to Mr. Hyde and ask questions. But going back to an overview, it was an amazing process. I think that we did it right, and with those community members involved, it very enriching process, and look forward to seeing what the future looks like. So thank you for that, Carol.
Yes, thank you so much. So I will start with the internal audit update. I'm going to let my staff share the projects that they've worked on. And just for the new members' benefit, these activities we audit are part of the annual audit plan that is approved by the school board at the beginning of each fiscal year. The internal audit charter requires that we issue a written report with our findings and recommendations at the conclusion of each engagement, which we do. And then management is required to respond within 10 business days. And the final report is issued to the superintendent, the school board, and all affected management. So the first item on our update, I'm going to let Sean tell you about purchasing card inventory audit.
Thank you, Ms. Matthews. Yeah, so back at the beginning of February, we conducted our annual purchasing card inventory audit. A little bit about that is what that is the purchasing department every year does an annual audit of all the purchasing cards that all the schools and different departments have to make sure that they are current and there's no discrepancies. Once they get all the forms in, they submit it to us, and then what we do is we go on to our SunTrust card management system. We pull a report that lists off all the active cards, which schools have those active cards, what the expiration dates on those active cards are. And then what we do here in internal audit is we went through and compared the inventory files for each school to the SunTrust report to make sure that the school's cards and expiration dates matched what our SunTrust card management system report had as their active and expiration dates. We had inventory forms that represented like 681 different cards over a course of all the 168 schools. Of all of those cards and forms, the only findings that we found during this audit was that one of the school's inventories had included the wrong expiration dates on 2 of their cards, and another school had included the wrong last 4 digits of one of their cards. So very minimal for the size that we did. And then our recommendation to the purchasing department after we finished our audit was just to follow up, make sure that they're constantly reviewing to make sure that everything is coming through correctly and accurately, and that any findings that we found for them to request new forms to be submitted by those schools.
Thank you, Sean. Any comments or questions for Sean? Okay, we generally have investigations that come up. We had mentioned to you in the past about a investigation that we had done internally with the Lake Gibson High School Athletic Booster Club, and we identified financial discrepancies of a potential loss of more than $40,000. So at that time, when we analyzed the records and identified what appeared to be this size of a loss, we turned it over to the Polk County Sheriff's Office, and they were investigating it and had an active investigation, but they only had the one suspect, which was a former school employee that was maintaining the books against policy, and she passed away in March. So that investigation was closed. But again, we did issue a report to the school, just advising them of proper policy and how we shouldn't have a school employee controlling the books to an outside organization. We gave them a checklist and just informed them of proper procedures and policy, and we got a written response from them for that. And these investigations that we cover in these meetings, they're public record because they've been completed. An investigation, and when we have an active investigation, it is not public record until it is complete. So that's complete. And now I'm going to, if there's no questions, I'm going to turn it over to Cece and let her talk about another investigation. And if you do have a question, please unmute and just ask. Go ahead, Mr. Keys.
I have a quick question, Carol. With that employee having passed away, and I know you said that those records are public, what was the final findings of that? Obviously, the Sheriff's Department, what you've told us, had closed their investigation because of the death. Were the results conclusive towards that employee was directly responsible for that?
Yes, that was the way it was looking. Like I said, they only had the one suspect because she had complete control. Complete control of the records. It was a matter of them being able to prove the dollar amount. So they had subpoenaed records. They had interviewed her. And so, yes, it was going toward that direction that they would charge her if they had enough proof. But she passed away before they could bring charges.
Thank you.
So Carol, Doretha, there was no recovery of any of the funds.
That's correct. No recovery.
Okay, thank
And
you.
again, that was an outside organization. It was the Booster Club, but still, you know, if that would have been possible, that's usually always part of the deal, is that we try to get restitution. Thank you.
And Carol, this is Kate Fields. I would imagine that there was a strong recommendation to the principal of the school and the staff to make sure that this does not occur again. I'm sure it was a very strong recommendation. Is that correct?
That's correct. I spoke with the principal, and then we issued a written report outlining every finding. The principal has to have more oversight. They have to be aware of the policies, and I know they've got a lot on their plate, but they have to be aware of these things. The school employee should have never been in control of the books, and she did things like got a stamp made of the treasurer's signature so that she could circumvent rules, and all of that just flew under the radar until I believe she went out sick. And then when someone else came in and started looking at the books, they were like, wait, some things aren't right here. And then that's when the fraud, a potential fraud, was uncovered. So yes, ma'am, in writing, he has to respond. Spoke to him, you know, had a conference so that he is very aware of what rules they should follow. Gave him a checklist to share with the outside organization, because those officers change, you know, so if new officers come in, then they need to know the rules as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, if there's no other questions on that, I'll let Cece talk about Fort Meade High School.
All right, thanks, Carol. For Fort Meade, the principal contacted our department with concerns over the accounting for payroll at her school. And much like Lake Gibson, this was discovered when the secretary went out on extended leave and someone else was doing her job, and realized that absences for numerous employees had not been posted to our SAP. Leave forms weren't completed, and the payroll records were unorganized. Prior to this, the secretary had received adequate training from the former secretary, who was very knowledgeable and experienced. A payroll audit from our department, which is just a routine audit that we do, was done in her first year. And there's an online training that our department creates through the Moodle program that every payroll secretary and principal is supposed to complete, and she had completed it. She was in this position for 2.5 years. During our investigation, we found that the school's payroll was deficient. Some of our findings were that the principal was not adequately overseeing the payroll function. They're supposed to go in and approve all payroll exceptions, and she was not doing that. Over 200 hours of unrecorded absences that affected over 20 employees were found. Posting errors for dates, types, and amounts of leave were found. Employee leave forms were not on file for many absences. Required information was missing from the leave forms, and some time records were not on file and didn't reflect accurate information. Corrections to the employees' leave balances were made to the extent possible. We relayed our findings to the Employee Relations Department to determine what kind of discipline they were going to issue. The secretary was issued a step 2 discipline, which is a written reprimand, and she was involuntarily transferred to a non-payroll position at another location here at the district. Since then, she has resigned. The principal issued a letter of apology to the superintendent for her role in the lack of proper oversight. So that was that investigation.
Comments, questions?
I'd like to speak to what Cece just said. When we had our last audit with CRI, it was brought up that there were some issues with principals signing off on time and supervisors signing off on time. we've at the district has provided training in the past and also provided job aids, which are listings of what's needed to be done to provide that, to actually do your proper function in approving time. So we have a couple different plans to work on this issue. The first is we are piloting a system called Kronos, and we're going to start with the food service workers, and it's actually a time clock system. So the employees will clock in and clock out. The second phase of that is leave approval, where the leave approval will become automated versus the paper copies that we have. Until we get that up and running, we're preparing, trying to prepare a new, simpler job aid to circulate to all the time approvers to help them know what steps they need to go through. And also, before we go back into the next school year, it's our hopes to have an in-person training. If we don't do in-person, it'll be Teams. But we're trying to put together something with all the different functions that are related to their jobs to help them have the tools they need to do this properly. So we do recognize the deficiency, and we're working to teach and train and get this taken care of.
Thank you, Heather.
I want to respond to Ms. Wright's comments. I know that we've had similar issues in the past, and I know that we have safeguarded and put some training in place. And Ms. Matthews, you can correct me if I'm wrong. So some of this, I don't know that training is an issue. I think that it's just a lack of oversight and a lack of making sure that things are being done properly. The training is going to be very important, but we've had this situation occur before. I don't remember having something as in-depth as this. Maybe we have, but it's been a while. And you can correct me, Ms. Matthews, if I'm wrong.
No, ma'am, you're exactly right. And I agree with you, because this one was, not a routine audit, but an investigation. And the things that we noted, we always look to see, okay, was the person adequately trained? So this person was afforded probably more training than typical, because she worked with the former secretary, who was one of our star pupils, if you will. She got to work with her for 2 weeks on the job training. We do have that Moodle online training that is available 24/7. And we, in the internal audit department, we check to make sure that people are taking that yearly as a refresher, and she had done that. And she had a regular routine payroll audit, and we view those as training because they are in depth. If we go through the records, we have an exit conference with the principal and the payroll secretary, go over each of the findings and explain, here's what you did wrong, here's how you do it right. And that, there's no punishment or discipline associated with that. It's just, a training tool. So you're exactly right. In this case, I'm not sure what else we could have done. The principal was very disappointed, even though she should have provided better oversight, but she also said, the employee just didn't ask for help, didn't say, I'm drowning here, I don't know what I'm doing, I'm in over my head, whatever the case may be.
Carol, may I ask a question coming from a different angle? If I'm out of order, please tell me.
No.
Any of the employees who had taken leave did not say that my leave isn't correct. Nobody brought that to the attention of anyone. If I took off 40 hours leave and I go on my leave again and I don't see a 40-hour reduction, I normally would say something to someone. So none of the affected employees made any comments about leave being incorrect?
That's a very good question. None of the ones that we identified. Now, possibly there were some that brought it to her attention and then she posted them and we didn't ever know about them. But the ones that we found, no. I would like to think that people are careful about those things. They look at their pay stub which is online, and they maybe track those things, but I suppose that that's not the case with everyone. And we had all kinds of employees, from teachers to custodians to, all the different types of employees that had absences that weren't recorded or recorded accurately. And it was over a 2.5-year time span. So no, You're right. That's a very good observation. And these particular ones, which affected, like we said, over 20 employees, did not bring these particular discrepancies to anyone's attention. And like Cece had said, the corrections were made to the extent possible because some of the employees, not a lot, but some had exited the school system. So you can't do anything about that. But the ones that were still here, whether they were at this school or another school, those corrections were made.
So I'm going to follow up with one more statement if I could, and I could be off base here and I plead ignorance, but could some of this perhaps be that these employees that are handling the payroll function are wearing multiple hats? I know in being involved in small business before, for years and years before I got into banking, that was typically a dedicated person. And they had, not much else to do other than that payroll function and simple HR stuff. But maybe these, whether it be a principal, secretary, or whoever's handling this function, they're missing these requests and recording and such because they have so many other tasks to do that maybe that isn't the top priority. And as such, we see these deficiencies. Just a thought.
That's a good comment. I do agree that they do wear multiple hats. We've kind of explained it like you have somebody answer an advertisement for an opening that says school secretary. And when they get there, you either put the payroll hat on them, the financial hat on them, or the terminal operator hat on them. Sometimes they wear more than one hat. And they're responsible for very, very important things. And they're not paid the best. Other districts have bookkeepers with some training, some outside training before they come into the job. We do not. Ours are secretaries. And so I've never, wanted to gloss over the fact that they have a lot of responsibility. We do try to train them, on the job and going forward, but they may come in with no experience. So in this particular case, this young lady was handling the payroll and then the financial internal accounts accounting for a middle high school. So a lot on her plate. Yeah, I agree. I'm not sure what to do about that because it always comes back to a funding issue. But yes, that contributes to the problem for sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions?
Carol?
Yes.
She did have the routine audits. Did you call it an audit and those were fine? Those did not show?
No, they weren't fine. We had findings, but again, it's a written report. The findings are enumerated. The policies are listed that were violated or best practices and procedures. An exit conference is given to the secretary and the principal together with our team to explain everything. And so, no, I wouldn't say that was clean. There were definitely findings, but it was in the very beginning, in the first year of her job. So that timing was good because that should have been such a good training tool moving forward.
Well, and when we do those routine audits also, we tell them, this isn't a discipline issue. We are doing this for training so that you can make the corrections. So in the future going forward, well, as you can see, that didn't happen because for 2.5 years it continued. So that's our hopes when we do the routine audits, that it will bring light to the things that aren't going right and they can make the corrections. But obviously in this case, it didn't happen.
Thank you, Cece. Any other questions or comments? So that's a good segue into the next section, which is our routine payroll audits. payroll expenditures make up the largest percentage of the district's operating budget. And so we perform payroll audits on a sample of schools and departments throughout the year. Mrs. Fields can attest to, I'm sure she sees in the emails, constantly coming through the payroll audits that we do. They're obviously conducted to identify areas of noncompliance with established laws and policies and to make appropriate recommendations to correct deficiencies. We test compliance with Florida statute, Fair Labor Standards Act, Federal Wage and Hour Guidelines, district policies and procedures, and district collective bargaining agreements. We review additional and overtime for the sampled schools for the year, just to see if that is reasonable, and we get, the justification for that. And then we test to see that the principal or department heads are approving payroll, which is an important internal control. And as Heather alluded to or mentioned, our outside auditors, Clifton, Marson, Allen, this past year, considered that a significant deficiency that our supervisors and principals are not approving payroll in many cases. So the Auditor General, who is the state that's auditing us for this year, they will follow up to see if they find that same issue or if there's been any improvement, and go from there. So in this past quarter, we audited several schools, elementary and high schools, a total of 6 this quarter. And our goal is to have all schools and departments audited over time. Heather, I would like to follow up. You mentioned the Kronos. I'm familiar with that. And I know that we were piloting with food service. And then I think we had to pause that because of COVID. So have we resumed using that?
Yes, ma'am, we have. We're working with a company called Meridian, who integrates all of our software systems. So Kronos, they're helping us get that up and running, and we've started progression through the phases again. We're hopeful that by the end of, I believe it's August, we should at least have a couple sites up. We're going to start with 3 different sites to see how that it works, and then get that rolled out into the different schools. And then our ultimate goal is to do it for all areas. We want to make it district-wide, not just for food service. So we'll encompass our custodians and transportation and secretaries and different hourly employees with that.
Great. That will be a very welcome improvement, because this is by large a manual process, a lot of this. So that will help a lot as far as efficiency and accuracy and all. So thank you. Any other questions or comments on payroll before we move on? Okay. So next I wanted to talk about construction projects. I had a meeting with the facility staff and the auditors, Carriggs and Ingram, to discuss their services with major construction projects. We've used this firm for the past 15 years, and to date, the savings of over $600,000 that we've realized from their services exceed the cost of their services, which is around $260,000. So there's a net savings there of $360,000. So it's kind of a win-win. The auditors are examining our contract documents and reconciling the job cost detail to the final payment to ensure the billings are accurate from the construction manager and determine the final contract value. They also review our contracts and make recommendations for improvements in contract language. The facility staff has had some turnover, so their services will also serve as a valuable resource. So that's, something that the auditors like to see, that we're looking at construction, and it has benefited the district overall. And I'll just want to mention too that the finance team and I have researched the new GASB 84. We've attended webinars and so forth to understand the impact that it will have on the district's financial reporting. our focus has been on our internal accounts and how they will be presented in the district's financial statements. And that's all I have in the way of an internal audit update.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that, Carol. Now I want to turn it over to Heather, if you'll take the lead and discuss with us the finance update.
Okay. We have a couple different things to go over today. First, I'll start with our investment reports. When we had our last meeting, we did not have our October report, so I've actually given you two today. We have October and January for your comparison. There's one significant increase I'd like to explain. If you look at page 4 on each report, excuse me, you'll see the breakdown of our funds that are invested. You'll notice that Wells Fargo JP Morgan Prime in October was $11 million, and you'll see that it's $99 million in January. The reason for that difference is we receive our tax roll, the largest portion of that November, December. So those funds were invested upon receipt. Our investment policy is liquidity and security. So you see that we have daily or next day liquidity for almost all of our managed funds, except for our Sawgrass Fund, which is actually our largest interest producing fund. So we do have a significant portion invested with Sawgrass. It's a very stable fund. Page 5 will show you our portfolio allocation. So it just is a visual to show you the breakdown of how our funds are invested. Page 6 shows our, it's called sector compliance. So it'll show you the percent that's allocated, what our percent permitted by policy is, if we're in compliance with that, and what the ratings are. We also have our individual compliance report, which is next. It'll show you the market value and our current allocation. Again, if it's in compliance, these just break down our investments into several different views for you to see. We also have our sales tax revenue bond is invested separately. That's for tracking and requirements. So you will see that our balance in that fund has gone down. That's because we have several different projects that the sales tax bond was taken out to complete. So as those projects complete, you will see these funds go down because we're expending them for the projects that were assigned. And then the final section is our impact fees. And how that works is, impact fees can only be used for projects that expand for students. It's student, when we have new students, we can build or furnish based on that expansion, but that's the only thing it can be used for. So those fees are also deposited separately and tracked separately because they have a different compliance requirement. Do you all have any questions about our investments? Yes.
I just have a question. Inflation may be about to ramp up. And in terms of the long-term investments in the portfolio, I mean, their prices are going to go down if that should happen. And so I'm just wondering, has anyone looked at that, that component of the investment portfolio and considered the possibilities of inflation over the next 6 to 12 months?
Yes, sir. We work with an investment firm called Water Walker. We meet with them periodically to overview how the market is performing and where our dollars can best be invested for the greatest return. So we actually, in a couple, I think it's about a week, we have another call where we touch base. We touch base with them monthly, or if we have any questions in the interim. So they do help us keep a very close eye on the return.
Thank you.
I have a question. On a few of these, we're not in compliance
Yes, ma'am.
How do you take care of that?
So when the report was run, the one you'll see is Wells Fargo, which has 99, I believe it's on page, let me find it. The short story is that's our most easily accessible funds. So when we received the funds, they were deposited in there. They've thus since been moved out. So you have so many days and the initial deposit goes in, and then we meet with the investment firm and discuss our different options and then disperse those funds into others so that we're in compliance with our policy.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, if there are no more questions, I'll move over to our March 21st, March 2021 financial summary. So for our this is going to go to the board on May 11th. We do a financial summary every month, which is a breakdown of our funds, how we've spent them, and where we're going. The biggest difference is our general fund balance went down a little bit to the 6.80%. In our fourth calculation, we lost around $2 million, $2,128,963 in our FEFP, and that was due to a reduced number of students. So that's reflected in our fund balance. That will continue to change as we progress through the year. And we'll have our final update on June 30th, so we'll know where we are moving forward. I just wanted to point out that small difference, which transitions us into, we did receive our fourth calculation from the Department of Education. There are technically 5 calculations each year. We receive a conference report early May. We have the initial rendition of that I'll go over with you. Then we get a second calculation in June, a third and a fourth. So from the fourth calculation in 2021, or in our second calculation, I'm sorry, to our fourth calculation, last year we lost, this year we lost $2.128 million. The biggest portion of that was from our weighted cost multiplied by our number of students. So our number of students actually went down 3,639 for what was reported at that time. We reported 105,729. We're currently back up over 108,000. Our FTE department, we've worked together to have an estimate of 109,476 for next year, the 21-22 school year. So based on our budget for that year, for next year, we are showing an overall increase of $7,728,000. The important thing to note about this that we're going to go over with the board again on May 11th is that a lot of these funds are allocated to categorical expenses. So you can only spend them on certain things, like our mental health allocation can only be spent to provide mental health assistance to our students. Instructional materials can only be spent on instructional materials. Our ESE guaranteed allocation is expended for providing ESE services to our students. We have our teacher salary increase allocation, which I'm sure you all are familiar with. That's the governor's initiative to bring every teacher up to $47,500. So that allocation has been granted again next year. It's $19,985,476. So that's on, we sent this little summary sheet out to show you the different comparisons. One concern we have at this time is we're not sure if the difference of that allocation, the 1.9 million, is what will be, what will go towards raising those salaries up again, or what the intent of those funds actually are. So I've sent a clarifying question to the Department of Education. I don't have the answer back to that yet now. Another important factor is even though it's showing that we have a $7.7 million increase, our discretionary funds have actually gone down. So we do not have a true picture of our increase. It looks like our purely discretionary spending has actually gone down 158,000. So it's very deceptive when you receive these calculations. It can appear that you have more funding, yet that funding has to go to specific purposes. If something's a categorical, it does not count towards your fund balance, towards your assigned and unassigned fund balance. It's part of your restricted. And the portion that's looked at by the Department of Education is the combination of your assigned and unassigned divided by all new revenue. And when you say all new revenue, that doesn't include your fund balance you've built up so far or your transfers. So we'll be breaking this down further for the board and looking at some different scenarios for what we have to fund for the 21-22 school year and getting their feedback on that and what direction we need to go.
All righty. Thank you so much, Heather. Appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Now we're going to open it up. I know that we have not received at this point, if I'm correct, Carol, any questions from the public. Is that still the case?
That's correct.
Okay, so now we'll briefly open it up for public comments if there is anybody that was on. Hearing none, we will now move to the next agenda item, which would be to set our next meeting date. The suggested date is Tuesday, August 3rd. So if everyone would be so kind as to check their calendars, let us know if there's any discrepancies there. We kind of feel like the first Tuesday of that month for that quarterly meeting is has been working well. Does anybody have any objections to that? Excellent. Hearing none, we will go ahead and put that on the calendar for our next meeting is Tuesday, August 3rd. And we will send out calendar invites as such. Thank you everyone for attending today. I appreciate everyone's time. I know it's one of those things you set aside, and as we're all busy, I really do appreciate everyone being involved. Appreciate all the staff, and thank you, Ms. Fields, being a board member on. We appreciate everyone. And that being said, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All right. Having a first and a second. I don't think anybody's going to object. So we'll consider us closed out at 9:47. Again, I appreciate you all. Thank you for being here, and we'll see you again.